So we've got time for a couple of quick questions. Ewan's been pretty active on the questioning all day, so you probably want to start. Either ask one of Aidan or in a slightly weird way of yourself. So anybody else? Yes. John. Good to see you.
See you too. This is just a comment. When the HbA1c and glucose data is released, it'll be great to analyse the correlations between those levels and the eye data, because the genetics of retinopathy haven't really gone anywhere yet, and it might provide clues.
Ewan?
You're pushing my eye knowledge to its limit. I'm sure that's the case, John. Come have a go. Come do it, yeah.
If in doubt, agree. So, any other questions? Aidan, I'm going to ask you one about. You talked about unsupervised learning. That sounds to the uninitiated that you're not using the video or anything. You're just taking all the parameters and then seeing how they relate to some health outcomes. But at what point in the process would one do that? Because many of the things that, say, physical activity, sleep, etc., are going to be related to, in the early days of Biobank, it's all going to be, reverse causality. So how are we going to, at what point do we do it? If that's not too stupid a question.
No, not too stupid a question at all. So what we're preliminary doing, I guess, is all we can take, lots of the work with the accelerometry at the minute is kind of relying on cross-sectional associations, because we definitely do need more time for outcomes to accrue, and you say all these issues of reverse causality. So all we can really do is have a preliminary look at it now, looking, for example, say with vascular disease, those who have a history of it versus those who don't, and then with the unsupervised learning exercise. So we think of it up to now, we have a priori definitions as the types of activity that we believe to be important, but what we want to do obviously is to see are there any unique patterns within the data that we might not have thought of before, and it might be once we do this analysis it might just come down to moving, not moving, but we may come out with something more sophisticated. The answer is we don't know, and therefore that's what motivates looking into it.
Okay. So maybe I can ask the audience something. Rory, what do you think about my gentle challenge about the place of communities and working groups trying to ensure that we don't make incorrect inferences very honestly from this complex data?
I think it's one of the things that we've been kind of concerned about as the data get more and more complex. And the people who are working on those data may be expert in one area and inexpert in another area. And how do you manage that? I think what was interesting in Ewan's presentation was that there are people who, in more fields, who are very expert on eye. I suspect they didn't have the kind of IT skills in their group, and we're seeing those kind of collaborations. So I think consortia forming that are based not just on people who are expert in one area, but consortia forming with expertise in the range of areas needed to really get the most out of it.
Sure.
Turning the data into variables, as you've been doing, as the imaging people have been doing, as, of course, the genotyping have been doing. And even with the genotyping, where we thought it was going to be straightforward, when Jonathan Marchini was looking at the genotype data in QC as it came across from Affymetrix, there were batch effects. And if one didn't take account of those batch effects in the analysis, one was going to get the wrong answer. So he did quite a lot of work on that. He hadn't anticipated it, and put that information onto the website to help ensure that people didn't make mistakes. So I think when we talk about feedback from researchers on using the resource, they will learn things that we don't know about the data. And it's not that we just want data back, we want to have guidance back on how to use the data that we can then share with the research community.
Sure, absolutely. Paul, do you want to come in on the same point?
Yeah, I did, and I just wanted to make a slightly different point.
I think the collaborative groups are incredibly important because they create wider communities and share expertise at a grassroots level. And there is no question but that feeding back image-derived measures is incredibly important in opening the use of Biobank for others in terms of these very detailed types of data. But all of that being said, I think the real richness of Biobank is that the raw data is available to researchers worldwide. And I think we have to be careful that, consensus groups and collaborative groups support the community, but do not control the way we think about the data. All of these measures are only as good as they were at the time that they were made, and they're changing literally month by month. Sure. So I think we have to be very, very careful that we are as open about our science as possible at all stages.
No, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I think that's a very good point maybe to end this session. Thanks to the other two speakers, and I'll hand over to Rory to bring the day to a close. Oh, sorry.